And we're live.
Well, good afternoon, Mesa Public Schools. It's Wednesday. That means that we have Facebook Live. We are so happy for those of you who are able to join us live, and then those of you who are going to watch this recording later. So thank you for joining us. I have the pleasure of having our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operation Services with me today, Mr. Scott Thompson. Mr. Thompson is definitely our expert in the topic that we will be talking about today, which is taking a look at what does it financially look like to recover from the COVID, the impact of COVID in our schools. And so many of you are hearing in headlines and learning about stimulus dollars, or what are called ESSER dollars, that are coming to public schools. And so today we are going to be talking about what those dollars look like, how they come to school districts, how we will prioritize those funds, and how we're going to reach out for community input. So we have a big agenda to talk about a lot of really important things about how we are going to invest in the kids in Mesa Public Schools. So again, I'm Andy Forlis, the very proud superintendent of Mesa Public Schools, joined by our assistant superintendent, Scott Thompson. And we are going to jump right in. We generally allocate about 30 minutes for this Facebook Live session. We've had some questions come into us ahead of time that we are prepared to talk about. And of course, we look to our community to keep adding in real time what are your questions, and we'll build in time for that as well. So we've heard about this thing called ESSER. And so Mr. Thompson, if you would be able to talk us through what are the ESSER funds and how come our community has probably not heard of these before?
Thank you, Dr. Forlis. So at the end of the day, ESSER is just an acronym. I don't want to even use it because it doesn't matter. It's just, in government, we like to put acronyms on everything. It's the stimulus dollars that are coming directly to Mesa Public Schools based on several different acts that happened over the last over the last year plus. One of them was back in the June timeframe. That was the first stimulus fund under the Trump administration that was approved, and we received about $17 million at that time. Then right in December, Congress acted again, and we received another $70 million that we're just now getting a chance to apply for. So sometimes people think things happen faster than they do, but it takes a while for the federal government to move, the state government to then tell us, the local schools, how that's all going to work. And then we get to apply for the funds. So we are just now applying for our second round of stimulus funding. The 70 million, basically telling folks what we think we're going to spend it on, with the ability to revise that over time. And then we're waiting on the other stimulus bill, the really big one that went through just a few months ago, then under the Biden administration. That was 160 million estimated coming to Mesa Public Schools. Could be more, could be less. We don't know the dollar amount, and we can't quite apply for the funds yet, but we know that'll be coming our way soon. So all of those basically lead to a great deal of money coming towards our district over the next 3 years. And Dr. Forlis, I think we talked. What are we going to say? The 4 summers in 3 years is what we got. So we've got 4 summers to work with this funding and 3 school years starting next year. So we're excited about the opportunities it brings. And basically, when you hear the word ESSER, it just means stimulus funds coming to schools.
And, and some of you might be thinking, oh, I would like to do a little bit more research about that. So if you want to do more research, the full, if you want to spell out that acronym, it is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. And it is part of the American Rescue Plan. So putting all of these names and titles and acronyms together, if it's helpful for you to build that picture, wanted to make sure that I provided that for you. So we know that not all school districts are receiving the same amount of these ESSER funds. So can you talk a little bit about why Mesa Public Schools might be receiving more funds than another neighboring school district? Can you talk us through that, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, that's been an interesting part of the way the funds have been distributed. The federal government, in contemplating these different acts, there were three of them, had the same idea every time that particularly communities with social and economic challenges were probably more disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, and that the resources needed to help students address what we say is the lost learning opportunities, not the loss of learning, because kids didn't lose anything. They just didn't get to go to school, or they didn't get to go the way they used to, and there were challenges. So this is part of how the money was distributed. So what that usually means in school districts is it's often equated to free and reduced lunch. That's kind of the general sense of how you know where the socioeconomic range of that school is, and where a school district is. So basically that formula was used to distribute these funds. So schools and school districts with higher poverty received more money. That's basically just what it comes down to. School districts that were higher wealth districts or higher wealth charters received less, and so it was based on a formula that looked at that free and reduced count, and then distributed that way.
And also the number of students in a school. So it is per
Oh,
student.
yeah, yeah.
And so the larger the school district, the larger the need, the larger the amount of money. And I think that that's really important because as we talk about how these monies can be spent, we know that we need to provide more support to the students and the communities that need it the most. And so that's a guiding principle and philosophy for us. So we're going to move
Dr.
into,
Funes, I
yeah.
want to expand on that because I think you hit on a really important thing that we should bring up. Mesa Public Schools, while we probably have received the most amount of federal stimulus dollars in the state, we did not receive the most per student. And that's because there are districts who have higher need as it was determined by this formula. So we often talk about that as being Mesa dollars. We are the largest district in the state, and so we often see the largest uh, amount of money coming our way. But when you break it down to a per student amount, we did not receive the largest amount per kid.
Excellent. So there's so much detail, and that's why we're so grateful to have your knowledge in Mesa Public Schools guiding this financial ship that is before us right now. So we've talked about what the funds are. We've talked about how the formula to calculate them. Can you talk a little bit about how can we use these dollars? How can we invest these dollars in our kids?
You know, it's this is a very unique time for schools. Many of the different funding sources, and this is where things get very confusing for parents and the public, and very confusing for us who work in schools, because a lot of the funding sources that we have a lot of rules behind them. And so we have, funding for this specific thing in a district, or that specific thing, or this specific type of program. And there's a lot of rules and specific ways you can spend the money. The stimulus dollars have been, for the most part, distributed in a very flexible way. They don't have the kind of rules that we are typically used to seeing from federal programs, which is exciting and a little overwhelming because we have the opportunity to use it in so many different ways. But just to list a few, I've got the list up over here. Lost learning opportunities, of course, assessment for students' progress. Obviously, if we can get better at figuring out where kids are, we can better figure out what they need to address the opportunities that were lost. Activities to meet comprehensive needs of students. I think you could see that definition alone could be a lot of things. Information and assistant to us, and information and assisting families is part of this. I can talk. Tracking student performance, facilities improvements, resources to principals and teachers for school-specific needs. Again, pretty vague. Low-income student needs could be addressed, staff and supplies for cleaning, PPE, things of that nature. Very, very large categories, lots of opportunities for us. And so in the district so far, we've been using the dollars to really address keeping our staff That was one of the things that a lot of people don't recognize. Just maintaining our staff during the early months of the pandemic was important, both drivers and cafeteria workers and teachers, because when we did open up, we needed those folks to be ready to get back to work. Some of them were working virtually throughout that entire time, but some were waiting just for kids to return. And it was important that we kept them employed, because if we let go of those staff members, we would have had a real hard time opening school. And we've seen that play out in the private industry, where people have left certain industries and they can't find servers to work in restaurants. They can't find people to work in different jobs that closed down during the pandemic. And so we were very fortunate that these dollars helped us keep our staff employed, kept them ready for when the kids returned, and helped us get open and educating kids back in person as well as online as quickly as possible.
So be thinking about those big categories, and also be thinking about the driver around getting the funds to the families and to the students and to the schools who need it most. So that's also top of mind in that very long list that Mr. Thompson shared. So many of you are saying, okay, so you can use the money for these particular items. So what does that look like in Mesa? And we've had questions around what are the district's priorities and how will they impact student learning? So this is the area that I pay close attention to because I'm fortunate to be able to have Mr. Thompson as a colleague who's paying attention to all of the budget details and making sure that we're following the grant rules and all of that appropriately. So when we've gone through quite a bit of exercises and conversations internally within our leadership team and talking about what are the highest priorities for Mesa Public School kids. And these are the 5 that keep coming to the top. The first one is supporting students' mental and physical health. Throughout the pandemic, we've received lots of feedback. We've conducted listening sessions with our students. We have listened to many of our families and to our staff members. And this, again, comes to the top every single time, supporting students, and I would say student and staff mental and physical health. Secondly, ensuring meaningful classroom instruction. We have very precious minutes with our kids every single year, and we have got to use those minutes to maximize the potential of every child. So how are we using our instructional time? How are we designing for learning? How are we providing opportunities to show their voice, to provide opportunities for them to talk about what they choose to learn and how they choose to learn that? Because we know that they need a strong academic foundation so that they can ultimately graduate and jump into a career that is going to sustain them through life. We know that we are going, as Mr. Thompson talked about, looking at assessment systems. What is it that our kids need? So one of our priorities is to implement academic recovery strategies. As we said, kids did not lose learning, but many of them have lost time. Think about kids that may have been quarantined 2, 3, some of them even 4 times. That could be anywhere from 10 to 40 days out of their typical classroom setting due to quarantine or changing learning models. So all of that, we know that we're going to have to be very intentional. We're looking at high dosage tutoring and academic recovery strategy as our summer academies that I'll talk about in just a bit. One of the things that we know through this pandemic is that teachers matter more than ever before. So critical for our children to have a high quality teacher that is engaging with them either in person or in a remote environment. So our 4th priority is building a strong and stable workforce for the future, not just for today, but into the future. How are we investing in our employees so they can be the very best that they can for our students? And how are we investing in our students so they become that workforce? We hope to hire many of our graduates in Mesa Public Schools. And then lastly, but probably what I think is probably the most exciting is innovate and redesign the traditional educational experiences so that kids can experience long-term success. So how do we get rid of the things that we know have not worked for many years in public education and take some bold steps, use these funds to invest in innovation, to say, do we need to look at how we use time differently? How might students be able to earn social studies credit and English credit in the very same classroom at the very same time. So how do we thinking about what our school buildings are going to provide? Is it we've had a lot of conversation around the need for a K-8 Montessori school, or K-12 arts integration, or a focus on STEM education. This is our opportunity. So that's a lot of information in a short amount of time, but those are our 5 priorities, and I'd like to quickly summarize them. Student and staff mental health, ensuring meaningful classroom instruction, implementing academic recovery strategies when needed, building a strong and stable workforce, and then innovation and redesign of what the schooling experience looks for. So that was a lot of information. Do you want to add on to all of that, Scott?
Yeah, I think I'd like to bring in the idea too. I mentioned what, keeping staff being employed in the past. We're also keeping staff employed for next year. And that's part of just a good strategy, right? We're really hoping, we're down students in the district. We're really hoping that some of those students will come back, maybe for the first time, kindergartners who may not have gone to school this year and waited a year, which probably a good year to do that, right? So those students might be coming to us. We don't know until they show up when and if they're going to show up. So we're maintaining a good cadre of kindergarten teachers out there. So we're ready for them when they show up. And we're doing that throughout the grade levels, making sure that staff is available and ready so that if numbers tick up, as we hope they will in August, as kids return that may have had challenges this year or opted out for some reason or another, that they'll come back and we'll be ready for them. We'll have teachers and staff and plans and all of that ready to go. And that's critical because I think people could understand trying to find teachers in September, October when kids have already shown up isn't the ideal situation. If the students don't return, well, then we're going to have lower class sizes, and that's not necessarily a bad thing either, right? So that would not be possible if we didn't have the ESSER funds, because in Arizona, schools are funded on what we call current year funding, which means the number of students that show up in that year is what our formulas that create our budgets are based on. So as we lost students at the beginning of this year and throughout this year because of the pandemic, our budget was impacted by over 30 million this year. And we're looking at about a $23 million impact next year, reduction in funds. And so those ESSER funds are really helping fill in that gap and letting us maintain what we hope will return to some kind of normalcy next August and students come back. So that's another area that these funds are being really critical in making a difference in our district at this critical junction as we kind of work our way out of where we've been over the last year.
You know, I think that's really important information to share and to put all of that into context. This is really a recovery plan from so many things that have impacted us due to this pandemic. So many of you are probably thinking, well, okay, Scott, you shared with us all of the allowable uses, and Andy, you shared kind of the Mesa Public School top 5 priorities. And as a staff member, as a community member, as a parent, a grandparent, you might be thinking, okay, well, I've got some other ideas. Where can I share my opinion, and where can I talk about what's really important to me? Beginning next week, we will start community meetings, and these will be shared with you. We will share through social media. We're also going to share in communications through all of our typical communication channels, through schools, email, text, and so on. That May 13th, next week, we will have a virtual listening session where we are bringing together families from the Dobson Westwood area and staff and students. Whoever would want, who is interested is welcome to attend. May 18th, the Mesa Mountain View area schools. Also on May 18th, we will have a Spanish language session So that will be conducted in Spanish. All of the notes will be done in Spanish, and we'll be capturing that information. And then on May 27th, the Red Mountain Skyline area schools will have an opportunity to join in. And if for some reason one of those dates you might say, oh my gosh, I'm a Red Mountain Skyline parent, and the 27th doesn't work for me, that's fine. We will make sure that we accommodate you in the Dobson Westwood area as well, or whatever date is better for you. So our goal is to get these ideas out to the masses, and then that will help us to start framing and refining what our initial thoughts are, because our ultimate goal is that we craft a meaningful survey that we send out to all of Mesa Public Schools. So we are going to need voices and input from all of our stakeholder groups. So stay tuned for that. And we've got another question here. When will the district's plan go into effect? Do you want to talk about that a bit, Scott? You talked about when we received funding from ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3. So when are we ready to roll with this?
Well, I think that's kind of an ongoing conversation, right, Dr. Frolis? So we have summer academy plans for this summer. We are using our stimulus dollars to fund summer programs at all of our schools. That's not something that we would typically do in a summer. We would usually just have a few sites running with very limited programming. The programming this summer has been expanded exponentially, as I said, to all of our sites. So please, if you haven't explored or don't know about what Summer Academy is, check it out at your local school, because I'm guaranteeing you there's a lot more going on than you could ever imagine. Great opportunities for kids to not just maybe recover from some learning lost opportunities, but also to just engage with their peers and maybe try to get back into a little bit normalcy of school before next August. So that'll be the first few weeks of June. So that's pretty exciting. From that, we've got some plans for next year to spend some of these dollars doing everything from supporting what we need to. So for example, we are a K-12 one-to-one laptop district, if you will, right? So that means that there's a lot of more equipment to take care of. And so we've got more folks helping us take care of equipment, or we're going to try to hire more folks to do that. We've got more staff coming in to deal with everything from literacy to other community areas where we want to reach out and have more services for families and understand more about what their needs are. And we've been doing a lot of that actually really well during the pandemic. And I think we're going to expand on that quite a bit, and just connecting services for families, whatever that might be, and whatever way they might need it. Might be students needing the services, it might be the family needing assistance. It might be just simply having a program that you didn't even know we had. One of the things I heard a while back from one of our staff members, and I definitely believe this to be true, that Mesa Public Schools has so much to offer. We have so many things going on, and we have a hard time communicating that to people. And we're going to use these dollars to try to do that too. We're going to try to communicate with you better. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're connecting the kids to the programs and the needs, and just making sure everybody knows all the great things that are available. I always like to say we have a Harp program. There's no district I know of that has a Harp program, right? That's just amazing. And we have a lot of kids in the Harp program, and it's a really cool program. And
Over 250.
Yeah, if you ever hear the kids playing the harp, it's amazing. And that's just a totally unique Mesa program, and that a lot of people aren't even aware of. So we have a lot to offer. But I understand, I'm a parent in the district, and it's hard as a parent to keep up with what your kids are doing, let alone what might be available for them to do or be a part of. And then I know we get emails and texts and all and peach jars from the school, and after a while you're kind of like, I can't take any more of this information coming from the school. I'd say maybe just look again, because there's some really good stuff in there. If we don't communicate, then we're under communicating, and then we do communicate, we're over communicating. So there's no win here. But the district is trying lots of different ways to keep you informed, not only about what's available next summer, but we've been trying to keep the community informed about COVID events on their campuses and all kinds of things this year. So I know I know my wife says don't send me another text. I can't take it, but there's some good stuff out there. So watch for your texts, watch your emails, and look for those summer programs because there's some really neat stuff going on there.
And some of you might be thinking, wow, I've got a kindergartner or an upcoming kindergartner, or can they be involved in this? Or I have
Yep.
a child who's going to be going into first grade and they're not enrolled yet. Please get your student enrolled, because the minute that they are enrolled in Mesa Public Schools, they are eligible for our summer academies. And what's most important is they are no cost. They are free. So
Yep.
everything that we're offering through our summer academy work is free. We do have a partnership with the city of Mesa. And so any of the summer events that are being provided by the city of Mesa, if your student is enrolled in Mesa Public Schools, there's a 50% discount to you, because we're using those stimulus dollars to offset that cost. So this is these are dreams that we've always had, that we are able to support our children over the summer. So a lot that we're excited about, and gives us an opportunity to test, to say, really, is this what impact do we see moving forward? And those are the things that we're going to continue to fund as we move. Like Mr. Thompson said, we've got 4 summers and 3 school years. So what we learned today is going to impact what we continue to do tomorrow and beyond. So we appreciate your time this afternoon. Is there any last words? I feel like we've talked a lot about ESSER. We've shared a lot of great information. Anything else, Mr. Thompson?
No, I think that the important part is just to understand that as the district moves forward, there's been a lot of ups and downs over the last year. I think everybody's been through that personally. We've been through it as a school district. We're looking forward, like everybody else, to moving forward. And I have a high school student, as I said, and it's been a rough year. And I'm looking forward to next year, and I'm looking forward to the fact I think we're going to have a lot of things available to help him and to help other kids be successful. So I've seen a lot of high school kids really struggle this year, and I know we've got some summer program again. There's some credit recovery in there that might really help. I know even as a parent, I'm like, I don't know if we can do 3 more weeks of school. It's been a rough year, but we're thinking about it, and I would encourage parents especially high school parents, look at those programs. Be okay with wherever your kid's at, because it's just been a tough year. It's just been a tough year.
Yes, and we're here to take good care. Summer academies begin June 1st, and they last until June 18th. So, and then of course our high school summer school, we've got the 2 sessions, and high school parents are pretty savvy about knowing how all those things work. So please reach out to your principals if you've got questions. We are always here. Superintendent at mpsaz.org is how you can get a hold of me. And we are happy to share lots of information with you that is really specific to your needs. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. Mr. Thompson, thank you for your time and your expertise. I greatly appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of the evening. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.